Okay, in the third grade, Warhol had a disease that affected his nervous system. It caused involuntary movements believed to be a complication of scarlet fever, which also caused skin pigmentation. So at times, he was confined to a bed, and this is when he started to spend a lot of his time drawing. He used to listen to the radio, collected pictures of movie stars, and have them around his bed, and used to draw them. Warhol later described this period as a very important development time of his life, not only for his personality, but also his skill set and kind of what he was really into. Obviously, the magazines and what he was drawing based on them. Kind of remember what happened to Basquiat. Basquiat, that period when he was recuperating in bed and he used to draw a lot. I think that's a very similar thing going on here, and I think that's very interesting that they both had this kind of um, artist in residence kind of period when they were, kind of homebound, kind of bedbound in their youth. I think that was definitely a big part of their how they kind of in a way saw the kind of world they wanted to create. Okay, so when Warhol was 13, his father died in an accident, and as a teen, obviously this affected him very much. And again, I go back to Basquiat's, kind of upbringing with his mom. I think that had a very huge impact on both of them, their mom slash dad. As a teen, Warhol won a Scholastic an art and writing award in high school. So obviously he was clearly an artist from a young age. After graduating high school, his intentions were to study art education at the University of Pittsburgh and wanted to become a teacher. But at some point, he changed his plans and ended up going to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, where he studied commercial art. Which I think this is a big part because he definitely came into art from the point of view of commercialism, illustration. At this time, he served as an art director. This is in college at the student art magazine Kano, illustrating a cover in 1948 and a full-page interior illustration in 1949. This was his first ever published works. He earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in pictorial design in 1949. Later that year, he went to New York City and began a career in magazine illustration and advertising. I think this is a very big part of his approach to art, his advertising angle. Warhol's early career was dedicated to commercial and advertising art. And his first commission was to draw shoes for Glamour magazine in the late 40s. In the 50s, he worked as a designer for shoe manufacturer Israel Miller. Warhol was an early adapter of silkscreen printing as a technique for making paintings. A young Warhol was taught silkscreen printmaking techniques by Max Arthur Cohen at his graphic arts business in Manhattan. While working in the shoe industry, Warhol developed his blotted line technique, applying ink to paper and then blotting the ink while still wet, which was very much akin to printmaking in the most like basic rudimentary scale. It's like kind of like having like layers of a screen. I would think, I think street artists and I think people like Banksy now do a very similar version as graffiti. So you've got various like stencils, if you will, and you kind of spray paint various versions, and whether it's vertical or horizontal, it's kind of the same technique. Um, so spray paint versus ink. Actually like paint. Wet paint. So his use of tracing paper and ink allowed him to repeat the same basic image, and kind of creating an endless variation of the theme, and often even like offsetting it a bit to give it more kind of sporadic kind of quality. And it was very much like a old school screen printing look that he was trying to replicate on a canvas. Now, something that I think is worth mentioning because I don't want to discredit Warhol as an artist in any way, but I think it's important to say that many artists like him, especially people like him at this time, didn't work alone. His studio was called The Factory. Um, and he was very much known to kind of directing people on how to create his art, his look of art. One of those people was a man named Alexander um, Heinrici. Have you ever heard of him? He's a famous screen printer who actually printed for many famous artists. I think it's important, kind of like how Ralph McQuarrie was very much involved in the creation of what we now know of as Star Wars. I think this person is very much responsible in a lot of ways for the look of what we now know of as Warhol. So watch this.